So let's say I totally agree with you that the left-right thing is being pushed onto the people as a way to divide us and distract us
Right.
while
Your
the
fellow citizen is not your enemy. They
right.
just want you to think your fellow citizen is your enemy.
Yes. Polarization now is rising and rising on both sides, where 42% of both Democrats and Republicans think the other side is evil, morally bankrupt, threat to the country, that sort of thing. And so one reason I started the Forward Party is because I think that this polarization is going to lead us to violence, unrest over time. And that if you could frame it as uh, the people versus the establishment or something along those lines, you could bring people together. The Forward Party is trying to send the message you just articulated, which is that other Americans are not your enemy. Unfortunately, right now you have billions of dollars in media and other incentives trying to pit us against each other. So I have an approach that I'm enjoying, which is say, look, you have these two camps that are so somewhat artificial, and like the average person who's not super engaged actually is like, and I'm proud to say that I reached some people who weren't politically activated previously. That if you find someone who's non-ideological, then a lot of common sense is very, very widespread. Like the common sense actually diminishes the more politically activated you get in many of the conversations I've had. But if you want to try and change this dynamic, you need to have a third party. And then you would want a different dynamic in the media, because right now you have the Democratic aligned media and the Republican media. So you would need independent voices to come up that represent something distinct from either. So that's the project I'm embarking on. The alternate version of this for someone who has some of the same goals that you articulated would be to try and transform the Democratic Party. And the chief way people see to quote unquote transform the Democratic Party would be to run for president, let's say in a Democratic nomination process, the way you and I both did just in this last cycle.
Yes, we do.
Now, there are a couple of problems with that. One being that the Democratic Party is going to be very unfriendly to candidates who are trying to transform much of anything. And I'm going to say that's approximately 100 times more true in this upcoming cycle.
I agree, because we were inconvenient last time, and they don't even want us on the first debate stage this time.
I'm not even sure there will be a debate stage.
That's an interesting way to look at it as well.
Right. So there was an article that came out that you were quoted in that asked whether someone was going to primary Joe Biden. And you said categorically, yes, someone will, because the people want that. And I believe that if someone did primary Joe Biden, there's a certain level of support that they would get pretty quickly, because there are any number of people that want bigger set of changes than they're getting, or Joe was never their candidate, or what have you. I also think that the deck is going to be stacked against anyone who decides to challenge Joe, and that even the people who are considered progressives who are, let's say, in Congress right now, that they are not going to undertake this because the pressure will be too great. And so as someone who is on record saying, hey, I totally think someone's going to challenge Joe, first, who do you think might undertake this challenge? And then second, what do you think about the fact that I'm sure the deck is going to be stacked against that person or a set of people? It could be more than one person.
Well, first of all, we don't know for sure whether the president will run again. That's number one. A lot of the people that you say will not step forward if he does run again might make a different decision if he's not running again.
Oh, if he's not running, everyone comes out.
I think right now they're making clear that their two main choices, they, meaning the elite establishment within the Democratic Party, they are clearly in love with Pete and Amy, right? My analysis of how the elite Democrats would act towards a real progressive running is exactly as yours. But I've heard a lot of people talk about how Bernie didn't have to acquiesce. And Bernie could have made it clear that if you treat me that way, one of the moments in the Republican stage, which was very interesting, if you remember, they said to Trump early in the process on the stage, do you promise that if you do not win the nomination, that you will support the Republican candidate? Do you remember his answer? His answer was, it depends on how you guys treat me. You look back at that and think that's exactly what the answer should be. So if I was someone doing that, that would be my answer. It depends on how you guys treat me. Political parties are not even mentioned in the Constitution. George Washington warned us against them in his farewell address. John Adams said that they represented the greatest threat to democracy. This idea that they get to be the gatekeepers they are, when in court the Democratic Party argued that they don't owe it to people to let the person who got the most votes win. We have to call the duopolistic system on what it is. And let's remember, the duopoly is actually a monopoly. You know, we talk like how divided we are. They are not all that divided, because the bottom line is the military-industrial complex will get what they want. On that, we are not divided. Oil companies, more than not, will continue to do what they want to do. On that, we are not divided. Big pharmaceutical companies will continue to obstruct any chance of universal health care. On that, we are not divided. They divide us so that we don't recognize how undivided they are in some very essential ways.
If you accept this is the set of issues, and then you say option one, run as progressive in the Democratic primary, transform the party, and then
and don't pretend that the Democratic Party is any different than it is, that you make part of your campaign to point out that the Democratic Party, as Bernie Sanders has been saying, has strayed from its traditional role of true champion of the working people of the United States. If it continues to be this basically corporatist machinery, it will not have a chance to beat Donald Trump.
Have you seen some of the commentary that Bernie should have started a third party? I guess people are suggesting
that's what people are saying. People are saying he shouldn't have stopped. That when they suppressed him both times, he should have said, well, I'm keeping on walking because I'm running for president and I'm not going to be stopped. I'm supported by the American people. This isn't about whether or not the Democratic Party is giving me permission.
I mean, he's not even a Democrat technically.
So why should he
there's
allow
nothing stopping him from doing it. If you think about people that could have started a successful third party over this recent number of years, Bernie's at the top of the list.
Oh, absolutely. And many people's frustration with him is that he didn't just keep walking. That's not criticism, it's just, as I said, frustration. The question I think people have for you is, number one, whether you'll be able to garner enough money to really make the difference that you'd like to make. Number two, whether or not there will be enough diversity. You know what third parties have done, and that's part of the problem, even calling it a third party. What they've done traditionally is that they've just kind of anointed a candidate. My hope for the Forward Party would be that you'd have a lot of really good people running, including for president, so that, you know, a friend of mine was saying the other day, you know, if the Forward Party gets a lot of really good people from diverse political places running, their debate will be the more interesting one that people will want to watch in 2024. Because if the president runs again, I think if there is even a debate at that point, but the Democratic Party has become so yada, yada, yada. I think of the Republican Party as representing a nosedive for our democracy, and I think of the Democratic Party as representing a managed decline for our democracy. And neither one of them, they represent such a solid status quo, it is not going to interrupt itself. This is going to take an intervention by the American people.
I like the idea of rejuvenation, and I also love the idea of having an independent nomination process for the Forward Party where anyone can participate. And you can imagine that primary being fascinating because
you'll have hundreds of people running, if not more.
Well, there'd be so many people, too, that would realize that they'd get a fairer shake outside of the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. So the Republican Party, just a quick, like synopsis of how that's going to go down. So you'll have Trump running. He'll be running against generally some second-tier types who feel they have no choice but to run against Trump and hope something breaks their way. So it's going to be Mike Pence, maybe Mike Pompeo, Chris Christie.
Nikki Haley.
I think Nikki Haley's already publicly said she doesn't run against Trump. So she's taking herself out if Trump is there. Ron DeSantis has privately said he will not run against Trump if Trump is there. So that's one reason I'm saying that
either one of those could be his VP candidate.
That's part of it. And so and they're also on the younger side. They're like, yeah, I'll sit out one cycle and then just come back around. Whereas if they go against Trump, then it could be a career destroyer because a lot of the base of the Republican Party could turn on them in a lasting way. So that's one reason why Trump's opposition will likely be the relatively less strong candidates. The strongest candidate that seems poised to run against him, in my opinion, is Larry Hogan of Maryland, who's termed out.
No, because he would be more the, Youngkin, yeah.
Let's say you were an independent human who wanted to run for president. If you try to insert yourself into the Republican primary, you're not going to get a real shot, given that Trump will be taking up all the oxygen. There'll be some other figures.